Welcome to ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. Get ready to be inspired to be all you were called and created to be. Join us as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. This is your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. Let's get ready for spiritual upliftment, healing stories, miracles, and divine goodness. Get ready for an amazing segment of ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast with host Victory Lyric.
Welcome to ArieVive Studios. We have quite the accomplished guest with us today, Dr. Elizabeth Fulgaro. She is an award-winning recording artist and songwriter. She is the CEO of 2 nonprofits and now a published author. We are so excited that she's here. Welcome, Dr. Elizabeth Fulgaro. So glad that you're here.
Thank you so much, Victory, for having me. It's really exciting to be able to present some of the things that God's had me working on. I'm coming to you from Northern California. I'm so happy for technology and looking forward to our discussion about the song prayers I've been developing for the past 18 years and the book coming out, Learning to Love, Not Loathe Me.
First, why don't you tell us a little bit about song prayers? What are song prayers and kind of how did you get started with that?
So song prayers are really songs that are prayers. I started developing them about 19 years ago, and I called them worship songs, but a lot of people can't connect with that word worship because it can mean a lot of different things to different people, and it can put some people off as well. And so really they're like poems, so they're lyrics, right? Set to music with which to reach towards God. So it's kind of like through the melody and lyric, I'm giving you ways to connect with God.
Tell us a little bit about how you ended up going for your doctorate and what you learned in that process about these song prayers and kind of how that's developed.
So I've been noticing I developed the song prayers because I felt God was giving them to me. That's another part of the story, right? And I felt very called through an experience I had to begin supplying them to military for soul care. And because when you pray, when you try to connect with God, then he meets you there. And what I started noticing is that those who are around me that were using the songs regularly, kind of like we used to use LPs, we have LPs returning again, right? And so like we used to use LPs and like people use playlists now where you listen over and over and over to the same songs. Then when people did this, not mindlessly, so not just as background, but literally letting it run while they were driving their car or cooking in the kitchen, but their minds are open to that connection with God or lying on the floor or their sofa, that they started experiencing inner healing. They started feeling better. They started being more resilient. Their problems in life did not go away, but they started being able to manage them with a whole different focus through the song prayers and that connection with God. God helped them reframe what they were going through in a different way that was really astounding. So I felt very called to do research on it, to let's see, is this actually what's going on? And so I enrolled in a doctoral program specifically to do research. I finished my doctorate early in 2023. And
congrats.
Thank you so very much. And the title of my study is The Influence of Song Prayers on the Resilience of Women Veterans, because I serve pretty much anyone going through a battle in life. People don't usually come to my songs and my books when they feel like life is jolly and all is well. They come when they have questions, right? They need a deeper connection. And so women veterans remain a group that I serve quite a bit, and I'm honored to serve them. So they were my population. Well, I'd like to preface it by saying that one of the reasons that I was excited to be invited to your program is that your program is really to encourage people to do what they feel like they're supposed to do, to follow that dream, to live their song. I got to be attracted to that.
That's true. Live that life song, yes.
Right. So I had written a couple songs. I had written one for my parents' 40th anniversary for the church celebration we're doing. And I had this little Bible study. There were 4 of us that met at our different homes. And we used to worship to CDs of famous artists. And then we would pray, and then we would do our Bible study. And this particular day, the Lord said, in February of 2004, I want you to play for them off a cassette player the song that you wrote for your parents' service. I don't want to do that because I can't play an instrument very well. And I had just recorded it on a cassette recorder technology from that time. So I didn't lose the melody. Right. And it had taken me like 30 tries. Cassette was one full version of the song, but I argued with God. I said, I don't know where the cassette is. But of course, he gave me a picture in my mind immediately of a shoebox that was stuffed in a cupboard that had all the cassettes for my children's growing up and mine.
And
And
there it
there it was. And so I
was.
put the cassette in. It was, of course, exactly where the song was. And we worshiped to it. The women laid hands on me and prayed me into worship music ministry, that they prayed me into worship ministry, that I would begin hearing the songs from heaven that God wanted released, and then that those would go around the world. And I was very touched by God and very touched in general. And those were big words.
Mhm.
And so I just started writing songs the next day. They started popping in my head.
Awesome.
And as a part of that, next year, I also wrote a song for the troops that popped in my head.
Mhm.
And then in February of 2005, I was up at my children's school. It was a Christian school, and I was dropping them off, and the crossing guard asked me to stay if I would pray for this young Marine that was being deployed to Iraq for the first time. He was in 11 at the school, and he was standing right there. And I said, sure, sure. So now the military is on my mind. I was already praying for them, but on my mind. And as I'm walking to my car, instead of the softball field that was always on my left, I had an open eye vision. Now, this is something that it's hard to believe in because it happens in your head. But it was life-changing for me. And what I saw, instead of a softball field, this one and only time, was I saw a desert. And I saw a group of troops marching in formation in the desert. I saw a canopy fall from heaven and hover over them. And so you could see their legs marching along, but it covered them over the top and on the sides down to their knees. And it moved with them. And I felt like God gave me a message all in a bundle of one thought that popped into my head. And his message to me was basically, if you will get that patriotic song and some of those song prayers, I will be their covering. I will have them behind. I will be the banner over them. And I will shine my light in the dark places so the enemy is found.
Okay.
That was life-changing. It could have been that I made it all up, but what if I didn't, right? And so that started me on my journey. I didn't know anybody in the military, and I didn't know anybody in music. And I had high school choir, a semester of college. I wasn't a soloist, and I could play in band on my clarinet, and I could fill on piano, but I wasn't really a musician, as you would call it.
Sure.
So to me, I didn't have any equipping, and I had no contacts, but I had no choice but to try to listen to what God was whispering to me every day to try to figure out how to get it done. And that's why I say, if you have a picture of what you think you're supposed to do, just believe in it, persevere, start forward, and see where it goes.
Yeah, because I've found, and I'm sure that, well, knowing your story, I know that you have found that if I take a step and I take a step and I say, yes, God, then, God keeps opening the doors and another door and another door. And, you just keep walking through, and it's shocking. So tell us a little bit. You had spent about a year trying to figure out how to get your song prayers into the military, right? That was
right. I was just trying to, honestly, it was even less than that. It was even, I just needed to know what form they were going to take. Like I couldn't arrange them. I didn't know how. I couldn't play them. I had melodies. I could kind of notate a melody line and I could put chords to them. But that's not how do I get them to the military? How do I do this? What form is this supposed to take, right? Am I supposed to sing them onto a cassette and prophetically just mail them, right? I didn't know what to do. So it became a everyday praying what I should do and then doing that next thing, which was, you're right, it was a year of every day while my kids are at school, my husband at work, making phone calls, sending emails to all kinds of crazy places, presenting myself. Hi, I'm a housewife from Northern California. I have songs I've written that I think are supposed to get to the military. I can't play them. I can't arrange them. I think I can sing them. And I don't know anybody in the military. And help. Can you help? Can you help? Lots and lots of closed doors. Because I agree with you. God will open those doors for you, but he doesn't open the ones that you're not supposed to go through. And so my experience has been, right, that like a good parent, he goes ahead of you. He goes, okay, here's what I want you to do. And then like a good parent, he goes ahead of you and child-proofs all those doors that you're going to come knocking on that you're not supposed to open, right? Not the spot for you. So yeah, it was a year.
Okay. And so in that year, you had told me that you had a little contact with a very high office. Tell us a little bit about that.
So one of the crazy calls that God had me make was he had me contact the Pentagon. I talked to church arrangers. I talked to choir directors. I talked to a rap singer who had a studio in his home because his child went to our school. I talked to the principal. I talked to a singer who had a garage band. She was going to get her musicians to work with me, and then her band fell apart, right? So I talked to a lot of people. And one of the places in August of 2005 that I felt like the Lord was saying, pick up that phone and reach out on another contact, was I called the Pentagon. And I asked for the Army chaplain office because I figured they might understand what I was doing.
Mhm.
And they told me someone would call me back, and I thought, fat chance, right? But a chaplain did call me back the next day, and he was very kind to me, and he said, are any of these songs recorded? And I said, oh, no, that's never going to happen. I mean, I didn't say that part out loud to him, but I said, no, they're not. I just thought I could send you like my melody line of sheet music, and you guys have a band, right? And he's like, no, I really need you to have it recorded. If you ever do, reach back.
Okay.
And we concluded a very nice conversation with this gentleman. And off I went for more months of nothing.
Okay. And then at some point, you had a moment where you ended up moving forward. What was that breakthrough moment for you?
Well, the breakthrough moment for me, I think we have to say, was there's several. And I'd like to present first that I did end up recording the songs.
Right. That's the
Yeah.
story. How did that happen?
So it had been a year, and I was frustrated. And, that's the one thing about God is that you're his child. And so he can take your frustration. And so I was frustrated. And so I was yelling at him one night, and I said, hey, you give me this assignment. You give me the feeling that if I don't get this done, bad things happen. I do all these crazy things for you. I call all these people. I'm like the village idiot, and I don't mind it. But if you really want this to help people, then you need to break through. And then because this is yours, it's not mine. I never had any power.
Right.
And if you break through, then I will walk through whatever door you present to me. And I'm positive that he was waiting for that, because I had lots of self-esteem issues and fears and insecurities like most of us do. And I think he knew that if he presented this door any earlier than showing me all the ones that were not for me, I would never have done what he presented. Next day, the next day, a friend called who lived about an hour and a half away, and she said, I don't know if you need to know this or not. I don't know quite where you are in your music journey, but do you need to know that there's a Christian recording studio that just opened in our town? I read about it in a local magazine at my chiropractor on Friday. Do you need to know this? No.
Yes, I do, actually.
Now I have to call. Now I have to actually, and that's a place I never would have called, because I saw myself as completely unequipped for anything of that caliber. Not confident, not good enough, not the skill base, not the training. You make a list, it was all mine. But now I had to. And so I called my friends who prayed for me, and I made the phone call, and the owner of the studio answered. He listened to me. I told him all the things I couldn't do. I told him what I was called to, and he invited me to come and bring my material, what I did have, right, to the studio so we could discuss it. I've been working with that studio now for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
And we have produced over, I'd have to go count. I have 20 albums complete, and we have another 8 in process, each with about 10 different songwriters, right?
Oh, wow.
And each album addresses a different need. So each album is a playlist, kind of like a remedy playlist.
Wonderful, wonderful. Here we are in our next segment, the artisan point of view. And Dr. Elizabeth Fulgaro is with us, and she's going to walk us through how to best utilize these beautiful song prayers that she's created.
So what I'd like to introduce you to is the spiritual practice of listening to song prayers, something to integrate into your daily life so that you can have this very special melodic time with God, where he can then do things for you from the inside out that help you manage and thrive better in your life. It's a really simple practice, and it concerns not just listening to a single song, but you want to listen to a playlist, an album, a set, and you want to every day do this. It's something that you don't have to lie down or sit in a chair or be still to do, but you cannot occupy your mind with other things. So that's why I've mentioned before, you can be cooking, you can be driving, you can be bicycling, you can be on a walk, but you can't be scrolling on your phone, or there can't be advertisements in your playlist. There needs to be space for this spiritual encounter to happen. Because what happens when you're listening to the songs is literally, because there's lyrics in them, right? Your mind goes to those lyrics and helps you reach up towards God to connect with him. As you're doing that, your mind can't think two things at once. And so as you reach with those lyrics that are encased in melody, it pushes out the other thoughts and makes you still so that you can receive. Now, my participants each did this for 28 days. I love it if you did it for a lifetime, but at least try it for a month. Try to let it become a habit. See what happens, because the results are not usually going to happen the first day. There needs to be space and time. So what my study participants did is a 5-step process, and they were asked to listen for these 28 days consecutively. And if you miss a day, just tag one at the end, right? A minimum of 20 minutes a day for 28 days.
Okay.
If you listen less, you're really not given time for those thoughts to be pulled out. You are welcome to listen more. And all of my participants did by the end of the study. But you need a starting place that's manageable. So 20 minutes is kind of what we came up with. It's 5 steps.
Okay.
Select your songs. What list are you going to listen to today?
Step 1.
Step 1. Step 2, reflect on a scale of 1 to 10. Where are you right now in this moment? How do you feel? 1 is the worst, 10 is the best. Now, listen. Reflect again now that you're done. Where are you at on a scale of 1 to 10? How do you feel? And what were some of the things that popped into your mind as you were listening, or what's on your mind now?
Okay.
And then repeat.
Okay.
So select, reflect, listen, reflect, repeat. No, that's
And
all.
what's beautiful about that is the level of self-care and listening to yourself. Even, how do I feel right now?
Yes.
Pausing to even allow yourself emotions has to be very healing, as well as the music.
This is one of the
So
things the participants said, is they said that reflection time and even making some notes about what they were thinking about, or what their favorite song was, or particular lyric that stood out, it really helped with the entire spiritual process.
okay. And so you had mentioned to me that through this process, you were the first one that gained healing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So I think most of us are coping through life as best we can.
Mhm.
And sometimes we're struggling with things that we're aware of, and sometimes we're struggling with things we really are unaware of. And for me, I was unaware of the level of emotional healing that I really needed. I was just sailing along, doing life and trying to get through it. And so as I worked on these song prayers, as I developed them, as I listened in prayer for what the lyrics were and the melodies were going to be, and then once we were arranging them, because the studio could do all the things I couldn't. They could arrange them. They brought the musicians in, all of that, right? So
Wow.
as I worked on them, because I work on an album usually for 6 months to a year. We arrange the songs, then we begin tracking in the studio with the musicians, and then I spend the next 6 months finalizing the lyrics and tweaking the melody to get it final. So I'm singing that song over and over and over and over to myself. And so I was the first one that began to be incrementally healed by the different albums that I was developing. And out of that, part of my healing was the uncovering of the places where I needed the healing, because I didn't know they were there. And as one extra note to the study, 3 of my women veterans, and that's 3/4 of them, they didn't know they had any lack that God needed to address. They thought they were doing great. But through the course of the study, listening every day, God uncovered things for them and provided the remedy that they did not even know that were there, that were keeping them from thriving more fully. And that has been my experience then as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love it. So out of that experience
Yeah.
that you've just provided the tutorial for, you then have written a book of your own, and that's really exciting. And so tell us a little bit about the book, and I'll go ahead and show the book while you chat about it.
So this is the first book that I've done that is extraordinarily personal. I've done some books that are to help you just draw closer to God, that are more theological, trying to take theological concepts and make them easier to understand. But this book came out of wanting to share with someone close to me what was going on for me. And so it began as a text message to her and then progressed into a full book. But really, it's a story of how God uncovered for me that I really had self-loathing and self-hatred,
Mm.
and that it was very much detrimentally affecting me and my view and my ability to enjoy life. And then God systematically led me through steps towards inner healing. It's been incremental, one step at a time. So the book is called Learning to Love, Not Loathe Me. And it also integrates in another thing that I've learned along the way is once the self-hatred was gone. And it's a very cool story how suddenly in 2017, after years of very intentionally doing hard work that the Lord was pointing out, he gave me a miraculous healing from this last little step, from self-acceptance to self-love. And I'm not talking a selfish loving yourself, right? God says, love God, love others as you love yourself. He wants you to love who you are. And most of us don't. Because he made you beautiful. He loves you as you are, infinitely, in the mess that you're in. And he knows you're messy. And he doesn't care. He loves you exactly as you are. And then you're his child, so he's leading you on your own journey. And so this book also includes what I learned after I came out of self-loathing, which was once I stopped pointing the fingers of self-hatred at myself and spending so much mental energy cutting myself down and disqualifying myself. Then through the doctoral classes, I had to study about systems like organizations and family systems and healthy versus unhealthy and understanding what's underneath. And through that, and working with a therapist who specializes in those who've been in abusive relationships, it became clear that through my family of origin, unintentionally, I don't think it was intentional at all, that there were means of behaving and interacting and treating people like me that were very destructive. And I think the comfort is in knowing that if you have negative thoughts about yourself, you didn't just develop those in a vacuum. Once you on your journey and you begin to stop spending so much of your mental energy cutting yourself down and destroying yourself, he can begin to point out where the roots of it are. And that's not so you can smear people or blame them or hate, or it's so you can understand, so you can heal. And eliminate one more reason you were beating up on yourself. Oh, I've got all these bad thoughts and I can't get rid of them, right? Well, they came from somewhere. They came from somewhere. We are all broken. And if we do not work on our emotional health, and none of us, we all grow up with some amount of dysfunction because we're human and broken. If we don't intentionally go after emotional health and learning what's right and what's wrong and treating one another, we're going to be damaged and do damage.
It's very true. And, it's important that we do have some damage, I think, in this broken world, because that leaves a wonderful gaping hole for God to fill. It does give us that need and that desire for him and his love and his compassion. Absolutely. Even though those are not things that we want. But Isaiah 61 talks about, he came to bind up the brokenhearted, to bring us healing. And if we didn't have broken places, we wouldn't need him for that and to go on that journey with him. So it's not, it's not a place, like you're saying, to turn around and blame others and be a victim. It's a place of, I am valuable enough to go and look at these things and learn to heal and love myself so that I can then overflow with love for others and God. Because if I can't love myself, how can I love my neighbor as myself, right?
That's absolutely correct. And it is really important for all of you who are listening, watching, reading, to understand you are so valuable. We have a culture which really exalts the individual. But if you go into other cultures and you look at what biblical culture should be, every single person matters. And if one person is suffering, all of us are really suffering. If one of you decides not to engage because you don't feel safe and you feel too broken, we're missing you. If one of you hates yourself and if you're not authentic to who you are, we're missing you. We need what you're supposed to uniquely bring. You're really, really important. And I totally get that as I say this, there's a lot of you that are probably disqualifying yourselves and saying, oh, not me. But I see you because I've lived that. I know that.
I have too, girl.
Right?
Years of just trying to disappear and not exist. You don't see me over here hiding all of the light that God, I'm hiding it, definitely hiding the light, like the scripture says. I was doing the opposite. So don't hide the light. Definitely let it shine, because yes, like you're saying, each one of us is so valuable, and it's so important that we all uniquely and authentically bloom and shine, because it matters to someone out there that needs what you have, needs your message.
There's one other piece that goes with that, right? That as you try to show who you are, there's zero expectation from God that you manifest perfectly. In fact, you will never be perfect. You'll never be, and he doesn't care. Imagine that you're this little child and how we applaud children that are trying. And that's where he is with you. So you don't come out of your shell with this mandatory, I have to be perfect. In fact, you have the freedom to not be perfect, because you won't be. And to rejoice in that and just grow. Be willing to admit where you're weak and grow.
Well, and in your imperfections, it allows that vulnerability that others then can say, well, I too can exist and bring what I have to the table without perfection. I can start trying as well. I mean, when you began, you didn't have all the pieces, and God then provided all of the pieces. So
Exactly.
you were never going to be perfect on your own. He gave you a whole studio to take care of you. And that, that just tells us how kind and loving he is. He may give us something in our heart, but he's not saying you are responsible to go figure this out. He's saying, I'm giving this to you. Give me your yes, and I will provide for you everything that you need. And that's, I think, what we forget in the midst of a dream.
That's it. And really, discouragement is the enemy's greatest tool. I'm talking about the spiritual enemy, right? That wants you to quit because you have an important piece to bring. If your piece is to go visit people in nursing homes and smile, I mean, if your piece is, all pieces are of equal value, every single one. And if the enemy can discourage you that you don't have merit or that your work doesn't have merit and to get you to quit, that is the only way that you lose what God wants to do through you. Is if you quit. So discouragement is a heavy duty tool. It attacks your mind. Find some good friends who you can go to when you feel discouraged and you can just say, oh man, having a bad day. I think I'm going to quit. That will lift you up and believe in you. So you can get going to the next day or go take a nap. That always helps for me.
Victory point of view. So that is a segment where we get to tell a you would not believe what God did story. And so I know you have a really cool one, and I would love for you to tell our audience all about it.
I'm happy to share it. There's so many. I mean, when you really agree with God that you will do what he tells you, even though it's hard, doesn't make sense, you can't see the future, you get a lot of these stories. But this one connects back in with that phone call I made to the chaplaincy office at the Pentagon back in August 2006. So that song, Stand Up for the Military, and worship songs were in CD form by August of 2007. And I was invited by some people who supported the military to come to Washington, D.C. And our very first activity that weekend, it was the weekend of September 11, 2007, was to go on a walk to honor those who had died at the Pentagon and been injured. So we were walking from the Lincoln Memorial to the Pentagon, and I was with a group of patriots, people who really were supporters of the troops. I just say, so we were getting our T-shirts at the tables, and I had not had time to contact that chaplain before I came to Washington, D.C., and I was very disappointed because remember, he said, if you ever have them recorded, let me know. And here I was, in Washington, D.C. Well, I picked my T-shirt out of the box and I turned to go to walk towards where all the people were gathering. And there was a man in uniform coming towards me. And I noticed that he had a cross where it showed his rank and his place of service. I thought, how interesting that that's a chaplain. And as he came a little closer, I saw the name. And it was the chaplain I had spoken to over a year before.
Oh my goodness.
Me.
What are the chances in 10,000?
And I had the album with me. I had the single and the album with me. So he probably thought I was a crazy person as I came running up to him and say, hey, listen, I'm sorry. And I've recorded them and I have them for you. And I was able to give them to him. And then we went and joined the masses and come to find out he was the chaplain leading the prayer before we started the walk that day. Just to see what were the odds. And see, that's the thing with God, right? What are the odds with God? Nothing is impossible. And he has plans. And how glorious to just be in his plans.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so excited about your story and all that you've shared with us today. And why don't you go ahead and tell us how we can find you? And I will click here on the link so that everyone can see as well.
Thank you, Victory. You can look under my name, Elizabeth Fulgaro, and you will find my website, elizabethfulgaro.com. You can also go to my YouTube channel, which is at Elizabeth Fulgaro. You'll also find the song prayers on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, iTunes, and other streaming services. And the books are on Amazon. Learning to Love, Not Loathe Me releases on February 14th. And what a great day to choose to embrace loving yourself.
Right? What a day for love. Well, that's absolutely amazing.
Thanks for tuning in to the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast hosted by Victory Lyric. It's our goal to inspire you to be all you were called and created to be. Join us next week as we showcase nationwide artisans and their unique stories. It's your opportunity to explore creativity with diverse crafts, recipes, and tutorials with practical tips for unleashing your artistic side. So until next week, God bless from your friends at the ArieVive Studios talk show and podcast and your host, Victory Lyric.